Imagine a world where the most dangerous thing isn't what you see, but the simple act of looking. In Bird Box, the end of the world isn't a loud, explosive event. It's silent, it's invisible, and it's terrifying because the monster doesn't chase you. It just waits for you to open your eyes. And the moment you look, everything inside you turns against itself. Bird Box throws us right into the chaos without any explanation. There's panic everywhere, but no one knows what they're running from. And that's what makes it so unsettling. Most apocalyptic stories give you a monster, an alien, a virus. This one doesn't. Instead, it shows you just how fast a society can collapse when fear itself becomes the contagion. We first meet our main character, Malorie, not as a hero, but as someone who's already disconnected from the world. She avoids emotional attachments, keeps people at a distance, and is deeply uncomfortable with the idea of becoming a mother. This emotional coldness isn't just a character trait. It becomes the very lens through which we experience her entire journey. Within minutes, the world falls apart. News reports show pure chaos. The streets erupt in confusion. People start harming themselves without warning. The only consistent detail is that every single victim looks at something just before they lose control. The film famously never shows us the creatures, and this was a deliberate choice by the filmmakers. The threat is far more effective when it remains unseen, working more like a psychological trigger than a physical monster. Based on the movie's internal logic, the creatures don't even have a fixed shape. They seem to manifest as the deepest fears and regrets of each individual person. We see this in scenes where characters hear the voices of loved ones or are tempted by memories, things that don't exist in a physical form. As Malorie flees, she finds temporary safety in a house with a group of survivors. This home becomes a small sanctuary, but the tension brewing inside is almost as dangerous as the threat lurking outside. The movie gives us a simple, powerful idea. Survival requires cooperation, but fear is designed to push people apart. Every moment in that house shows us how fragile trust really is. When another pregnant woman, Olympia, arrives, Malorie is initially annoyed by her vulnerability. But over time, their opposite personalities highlight something crucial. Where Olympia is gentle and hopeful, Malorie is hardened and defensive. This contrast perfectly sets up the massive emotional shift Malorie will eventually have to make. The film constantly jumps between two timelines, the early days in the safe house, and 5 years later, a perilous journey down a river with 2 small children. This switching timeline isn't just a storytelling trick. It enhances our own feeling of disorientation. In the river scenes, Malorie is stricter, harsher, almost robotic. She only refers to the children as boy and girl, a heartbreaking symbol of her refusal to form emotional bonds. In her mind, attachment equals weakness, and weakness leads to death. Back in the safe house, we watch the group struggle with basic rules, keeping the windows covered, rationing food, staying absolutely silent. Then a stranger named Gary arrives, and the entire tone of the film shifts. Gary seems normal at first, but there are subtle hints that something is deeply wrong with him. Critics and fans believe Gary represents those who willingly embrace destruction. In the world of Bird Box, some people become seers. They're not driven mad by the creatures. Instead, they become disciples, trying to force others to look. Gary's sketchbook, filled with twisted, dark figures, suggests he has seen something that fundamentally changed him. The moment Gary betrays the group, is one of the film's most intense scenes. He rips the coverings from the windows, letting the daylight pour in. The chaos that follows isn't graphic, but it's emotionally crushing because the threat feels so final and inescapable. Malorie manages to survive with the children, largely because of her discipline and that emotional distance she's maintained. But her survival isn't heroic. It's raw, instinctive, and driven by a deep fear of responsibility. The river journey becomes the true emotional heart of the story. Malorie, boy and girl, drift downstream, completely blindfolded, guided only by sound and touch. This is a perfect metaphor for how Malorie has been navigating her life with extreme caution, with fear, and with a refusal to trust anything she can't control. At one point, an unseen presence tempts the children by mimicking familiar voices. The film never confirms that the creatures can speak. It's more likely these are auditory hallucinations, a psychological attack triggered by fear and memory. The movie deliberately leaves this ambiguous. The climax arrives when Malorie finally reaches a sanctuary hidden deep in a forest. She was expecting a military bunker, a fortress, but what she finds is a community for the blind. This detail is beautifully symbolic. The very people who were once considered disadvantaged are now the ones who are safest from this new world's threat. It's here that Malorie realizes she can finally stop just surviving and actually start living. She gives the children names Olympia and Tom, connecting them to the people who sacrificed themselves for her. And in that moment, the true meaning of Bird Box becomes crystal clear. The creatures represent different things to different people, but they consistently symbolize our internal fears, our unresolved grief, and our past traumas. Malorie's journey was never about defeating an external enemy. It was about learning how to form an emotional connection in a world where that very act feels like the most dangerous thing you can do. The unseen threat was a mirror to her own avoidance of vulnerability. By finally embracing that emotional connection, she gains a strength she had been running from for years. The film ends without ever explaining where the creatures came from or why they appeared. And this lack of an answer is the whole point. Some mysteries are more powerful when they're left unsolved. The story was always focused on emotional survival, not on scientific reasoning. The filmmakers wanted to explore how people rebuild their identities after trauma, not just how they escape an apocalypse. As Malorie stands in the sanctuary, surrounded by people who found hope in the darkness, the story closes on a quiet but powerful message. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not to look outward at the danger, but to look inward at yourself. And sometimes true survival isn't about avoiding what scares you, but about finally accepting the parts of yourself you've been running from all along. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into your favorite films. See you next time.